when you talked about carbon offsets, because I'm one of the people who has been advocating for the use of carbon offsets, and I wasn't looking at the other side of the coin. So for me, that's an eye-opener. Our country has a huge tourism industry, and one of the ways in which we've been encouraging tourism is to give back through carbon offsets. Now I have a lesson that I've learned from here. Another thing is I belong to GCAP, and I think it was one of you who talked about the tribunals because of the voicelessness of the women. So the women have held climate justice tribunals, and they have presented their findings to GCAP, and it's going to be made into a documentary. But I just want to reinforce everything Kuje said, that we will network with you because these are critical issues, and to thank you very much for brilliant presentations. Thank you.
Okay, do we want to get any response to those first 3 comments or questions, and then we'll take a few more?
Okay, thank you for your comments. Laura, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Good. Okay. About the immigration, as you said, it is really a big issue, a big problematic that is going to be more and more critical all over the world. Some studies say that to 2050 there is going to be more than 100,000 million people in migration for climate catastrophes. So we have to be prepared. And the most important for me, because I have been taking place in some delegations in Europe and in the US, is to build sensibilities between the North and the South. It is very, very important. And women can play a very important role in this, because we share a lot of things in the care culture. The care culture which is under the world is really important, and we have to strengthen that. And the other thing that it is important you mentioned about the resources. Resources is something that is inside the negotiations, and it is under the chapter of financing. And that's very important. What we say from Bolivia as all resources for financing adaptation must be under a democratic control, and they don't have to be conditioning funds, because we have already the experience with the World Bank politics, and a lot of conditionalities made a big social problems in our countries. So we have to be very careful about that. And the final thing that you said about the tribunals, I also am very involved in building a world ethic tribunal from civil society in order to show how is climate change impacting communities, and also to contribute in the consciousness that we have to change. But there is also a formal initiative inside the UN trying to find inside the institutionality of the UN some mechanisms to build up a tribunal on climate change in order to control more, because the actual mechanisms that we have under the convention and under the Kyoto Protocol are not enough. Instead of controlling, in some countries they have increased their emissions. So we have to build a kind of tribunal, a kind of mechanism that can really help us to stop this machine.
So I just want to say how important I feel like it is for conversations like this to happen. Like the second sister from the Gambia mentioned that, you know, she had been someone in her country who has been ferociously advocating on behalf of offsets, and so now hearing what the other side of the coin looks like and sounds like, you know, that may give her the opportunity to take back something to her country, to really begin to look at things differently. It is those kinds of conversations that are important. In the United States, for instance, there are African American communities right now who have been dealing with multiple coal-fired power plants who, just out of necessity of one other option, are looking at the promise of a nuclear power plant, because what they want is for their children to be able to breathe clean air, and consistently they are pushed this promise of clean air and being able to be a more sustainable community if they are open to the idea around nuclear power. But it's going to be conversations with women from Jahan's community and other indigenous communities for them to be able to see what the damage is of the mining of uranium and the disposal of nuclear waste, to really let them see that this option isn't so clean and that we all really need to be working and pushing towards serious renewable energies that are clean and actually healthy for all of our communities, not just one of them.
Yeah, and I think I'll just respond to what you were saying about someone who is using offsets as a way to bring in a tourist stream in your region or in your country, in Gambia. I think that a lot of our tribal leaders too, because in the U.S. we also have tribal governments that were set up kind of as models of the U.S. government with 3 branches, and we have a president. A lot of our tribal governments are beginning to get involved in the issue of climate change now because they might see some money in it, especially like in Canada, where there's still a lot of intact forests. And they're like, oh, well, maybe we can join these forest offsets. And it's understandable, right? It's understandable that people, need resources and want to use these as some sort of alternate means of economic development. If they're protecting forests, that's a good thing, right? But it is, to me, it really puts out there this need for just education of a lot of people. We really are committed to working with a lot of our tribal governments now to understand, like how you said, the other side of things, like looking at this pen from every angle, right? Because a lot of times people out there are only being, people with resources, who have money invested or future money invested in a carbon market are the ones who have resources out there to educate people on how these things work and why it's a good thing, and they don't always give you all sides of the coin. So it is very important in terms of mobilizing and networking that we just kind of do that basic education and have just maybe international conference calls about carbon offsets, with people from different regions to say, oh, well, this is what's happening here, this is the way that we look at it, just so that we all kind of have a really good understanding. I can see that as one way that we could move forward out of here. That would be good. Okay, so I'm gonna, you first, and then you as the next three. Do you want to come up here and use the mic?
Elizabeth, can you say one of those for me?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ramat Ahmed. I'm from Ghana, but I'm now in the US. I live in the Bronx. And I would like to mention the migration and the environment. From my perspective, I see myself as an indigenous woman with no knowledge about the environment. And I think it would be very important if we could kind of have a clear and focused strategy in this topic, because sitting and listening to everybody, it looks very complicated as an indigenous woman. And I'm asking myself, how would we help the women at the grassroots understand and grasp this concept? And especially women who have migrated. I live in the Bronx, and I know majority of our people in the Bronx are immigrants. At the moment, the second majority people living in the Bronx are Africans. How many of us understand the concept of this issue at the grassroots? What should we do to conserve energy? And I'm also looking at the countries in Africa. We have a lot of development going on in Africa, and we have mining emerging. That is the new, financial booming in Africa. A lot of countries have identified mining in those in their countries. What are we doing in advocating with our women at the grassroots in Africa to be part of this process of mining in the developing world? There are a lot of infrastructure going on in developing countries. I'm told when you go to some countries like my country, Ghana,
there's a lot of development that has happened about 10 years ago compared to today. A lot of development is going on. What is the future of development in Ghana in terms of conserving the environment, and what are the indigenous people like myself, the women, are doing to protect the environment? Thank you.